These are the materials that you will need to build a trebuchet. You need two 36-inch pieces of 2x4, two 15-inch pieces of 2x4, two 18-inch pieces of 2x4, one 8-foot section of 2x2, two plywood triangles that are 18 inches by 15 inches, one 8-inch piece of rebar. You'll also need a 7/8-inch piece of dowel that's been cut down to 18 inches. You'll also need some other things besides lumber. You need 2.5-inch wood screws, 1.5-inch nails. You'll need a small metal ring. You'll need one nail, a finishing nail that does not have a head. You need an eye screw, one gate latch. You'll need a piece of cloth to hold your projectile, and you'll need some heavy string. To build a trebuchet, we're going to need some tools. We'll have a standard hammer. We'll have a 1-inch spade bit, 1/2-inch spade bit, a regular 1/8-inch drill bit, a Phillips head screw bit, a tape measure, a wood clamp for holding things together, and you also get to use a variable speed power drill, both for drilling holes and putting in screws. So to start off with, we'll build a base for the catapult. That takes two of the 36-inch 2x4s and two of the 15-inch 2x4s. To begin with, you need to mark where to put screws to hold the base together. To do this, measure in from the end 3/4 of an inch and make a mark. Go to the other side of the 2x4, measure in 3/4 of an inch and make a mark. And then draw a line that connects those two marks. Then to know exactly where to put the screw, you measure down from the top 3/4 of an inch and you make a little plus sign. And then from the bottom you also measure up 3/4 of an inch and make a plus sign. That's where we'll drill the holes to help put in the screws. We'll do this to all ends of these boards. Right. Alright, we're going to drill pilot holes to help putting the screws go faster. To do that, have the little marks that you just marked off at the ends extend over the edge of the lab bench. Take your clamp, squeeze it down tight so that the board doesn't move. With your safety glasses on, stand your drill straight up at the mark. Squeeze gently to get it going, and then squeeze fast and drill through. Again, squeeze gently to get your hole started, and then squeeze quickly to make the drill drive all the way through. And you'll do that to both ends of both 36-inch boards. Alright, now we'll attach the first two end pieces that are 15 inches long to the 36-inch frame boards. To do that, it's nice to have friends to help you, but stand them up kind of like this. And then position them so that the ends are very nicely lined up on both ends. Have everything be standing up nice and straight. And then with a clamp, put the clamp about 5 inches from one end. Tighten it up just a little bit. If the ends get a little bit jagged, which is okay, they will, just give them a gentle little tap until everything gets back in nice lined up spots. Do that on both ends. And then with a 2.5-inch screw, you'll drill through the long board into the short board. To do this, start with a slow speed on your drill and push hard. That'll drive it right in. Move over to the other end and screw those in as well. Then you disconnect the clamp, turn it over, and screw the other 36-inch piece on the other side using the clamp again. All building projects, the more time you spend getting everything straight, the better it'll turn out. And with that, we have the base of the catapult or trebuchet done. We need to find where to put the holes that we will put the dowel through, which acts as the axle for the throwing arm for the trebuchet. To do that, we need to find the center of the board, which is exactly 1 3/4 of an inch from the edge. To do that, line your ruler up on one edge of the 2x4 and measure in 1 3/4 of an inch and make a mark. Then from the top, measure down 1 1/2 inches and make another mark. Where the two places meet, that's where you'll drill your hole. Do that to both boards. With both boards marked, it's now time to drill a 1-inch hole in the markings. To do that, take your clamp and clamp your piece of wood down so that it doesn't move while you drill. We're going to use a 1-inch spade bit on the power drill. This will drill a big hole fairly quickly. With your safety glasses on, put the point of the bit on the X that you marked and start the drill going fairly slowly. After you get a little hole started, you can speed up the drill. Don't push too hard, the drill will work, and make sure that the hole has a place to go out over the edge of the desk so you don't dull the bit. Drill a hole in the other piece as well. With the holes drilled in the the uprights, we can now start to figure out where they need to go. From one edge of your base, on the inside, measure back 16 inches from the 2x4 and make a mark near the outside of your frame. Grab one of your uprights, and with the hole facing away from the frame, line the back edge up with the mark you drew on the frame. It's time to use the clamp again. Grab the clamp and use that to squeeze the upright piece to the frame. So make sure it's nice and tight. Then you'll take one of the triangular pieces of plywood and you'll line it up The 15-inch edge goes to the bottom of the frame. The 18-inch side goes up the side of the frame. And once that's in place, all lined up, nail it in place with about 8 nails. Once you have 2 nails in the upright and 2 nails in the base, you can take the clamp off to make it easier to put in the last 4 nails. All right, to install the other upright, we need to turn the base with the first upright over and get a friend to hold it so it doesn't tip while we do some measuring. You want to make sure that you measure back from the same edge you measured from for the first upright. So again, we're going to measure back 16 inches and make a mark. Grab the last upright, again with the hole facing away from the base. Line it up with the mark that you just made. And with the clamp, again, clamp it in place. Line up the 18-inch side of the plywood with the upright piece and line up the bottom 15-inch side of the plywood with the bottom of the base. And again, nail it in place with about 8 nails. Once you have 2 nails in each piece, you can take the clamp off to find it easier to nail in the rest of the nails. Right, with the base finished, it's now time to start thinking about the throwing arm for the trebuchet. To do that, we use 2x2 lumber to make the throwing arm. We started out with an 8-foot piece. I cut one piece out that's 40 inches long. That's a good size length for the throwing arm altogether. Because it's so skinny, we have to reinforce it a little bit. So to do that, we take out another piece of the 2x2, and at one end, mark out an angle that's about 45 degrees. Doesn't have to be exact, just about. Tape measure from the point, measure out 18 inches and make a mark. And then draw a line back from that that's also about 45 degrees. So when you cut it out, it'll make a trapezoid. So I'll cut those out now. Do that on 2 pieces. Now that we have the pieces cut with the beveled edges, we need to decide where to put the hole that the axle for the trebuchet will ride. Now, part of the project is figuring out how you might want to manipulate your trebuchet. So this is just an example. You don't have to put the hole at this point, but it's a place where we'll start. So the throwing arm is 40 inches. I'm going to measure up 10 inches, make a mark, and then I'm going to measure down 3/4 of an inch and make another mark. That'll put me in the center of this 2x2. I'm going to clamp the board in place and then drill the hole, a 1-inch hole with the spade bit at the mark. So again, we're using the 1-inch hole, and there won't be very much room on either side, so you have to drill carefully. Cool. All right, so we have our pieces cut out, and we're now going to use them to help reinforce the throwing arm so that the great force that's put on it won't break it out right here. To do that, we're going to line up the 2x2s so that the beveled edge matches up with the flat edge of the throwing arm. We'll stand it up vertically. Using a clamp, we'll clamp these two together. And then with the drill, we'll drill a 2.5-inch screw through both pieces. These 2x2s are softer than the 2x4s, so the drill will go a little bit faster. I say with great confidence. There's one. Put one screw at each end. Take off the clamp, turn it over, line up the other piece, put the clamp back down, put one screw in each end of this piece as well. All right, that's the throwing arm assembly. To make the axle for the throwing arm, we use 7/8-inch doweling. We need to measure off an 18-inch section of that. Mark it at 18 inches, and then cut it with a handsaw. Trebuchets use a counterweight to throw the projectile. To hang our counterweights, we're going to use a piece of rebar that's inserted through a hole we're about to drill in the throwing arm. To do that again, clamp the throwing arm to the table you're working at. Then we're going to measure up from the center piece, the actual throwing arm piece, 2 inches. And then we'll measure in, again, 3/4 of an inch. And that'll give us a spot that's right in the center of that piece of wood. Then with a 1/2-inch spade bit, we will drill as straight as we can through this piece of wood. Sometimes help to pull out and get the sawdust out of your hole. My clamp was a little loose. There we go. You can now take the rebar and slide it into the hole. it's a little loose, that's okay. Get a piece of duct tape, wrap it around, and that will hold it in there snug. A trebuchet uses rope and some material to throw its projectile. Part of the way that release mechanism works is you need a finished nail pounded at an angle that points slightly away from the eye hook we put in for the release mechanism. So drive that in. So it looks about like that. So the catapult is starting to look like a catapult. We now take
the trebuchet.
The trebuchet is now starting to look like a trebuchet. We take the dowel that we just sawed, we pass it through one of the uprights, we pass it through the hole we drilled on the throwing arm, and then we pass it through the hole on the far side. The arm will naturally fall, so at this point gently lower it backwards so it doesn't hit anybody in the face. And then on one side, you want to take one 2.5-inch screw and screw it into the dowel from this face. That'll hold the dowel in place so that it won't slip while you're doing your firing and testing. So it's good and tight. So now it's stuck.
Right.
Trebuchets are beautiful instruments, but they needed to have some sort of firing mechanism. So to make the firing, we're going to find the center of the back of the trebuchet. So we're going to measure from end to end. It's 18 inches. So we want to mark off a spot on the back of the trebuchet that's 9 inches from either side, which is in the middle. We're going to measure down about another inch from that 9-inch mark. Make a mark. And we're going to drill a very shallow hole that we're going to install the firing mechanism into. Don't drill too deep because the screw on the firing hook isn't very long. It's just enough to help you get your hole started. Once you get that hole drilled, take this gate latch and screw it in as far as you can. And your last twist, make sure that the hook is straight up and down so that the hook will pull parallel to this board. We're going to use an eye hook to go with this that will hold the arm down when there's weight on the other end. To find the spot for that, pull the arm back, pick the hook up, hold your finger in place where that was, and then mark it with a pencil underneath.
Okay.
At the pencil mark you just made with it flipped over, twist the eye screw in. We don't want to drill a pilot hole here because we don't have a lot of space to work with and we might strip out the screw. So put the eye screw in as far as you can. One more half twist, and have the screw be parallel with the throwing arm. So with the gate latch and the eye screw in place, you can pull it down and hook it in. Alright, so your stone can throw well. We need to cover the deck of the trebuchet with cardboard. 1 or 2 pieces, whatever seems to work best for you. So slide that in here. The other piece in here. And you can hold it in place either with duct tape or staples. We're now going to start putting together the sling for the trebuchet. For that you need a piece of fabric, you need 2 pieces of strong string, and you need a small circle, metal circle. Poke a hole through the fabric, tie off one end of one string through that hole. Tie good knots, otherwise it will unravel with the force that the trebuchet will put on it. Part of using a trebuchet involves figuring out how long to make the strings and where to put the basket. Tie the other string on the other side. And then tie the ring on one end. Take the lone free loose end now and come over to the latch and tie it into this eye hook. Check sure to make it tight. There's one more thing left to do. We need to attach a piece of string to allow the trebuchet to fire. To do that, get a couple meters of string, tie a slip knot in one end of it. Attach that slip knot over the hook and pull it snug. This will allow you to pull the trebuchet release without putting yourself in danger. The way that will look like this. You'll have your sling back. You'll put the hook into the latch, and then you will pull, allowing the trebuchet to fire. Trebuchets were castle busters, and I'm not going to tell you some of the finer points of tuning your trebuchet. You still need to figure out a way to attach the counterweights to your trebuchet, and there's lots of ideas that you might incorporate as to where to drill the hole for the throwing arm and different ways you might set up the sling. This is a basic package. It's up to you now to build the most powerful trebuchet you can.